Hello everybody and welcome back to another video about Mean Girls. I keep making these and I'm having fun. So since the last two videos I have made about Mean Girls, I have took it upon myself to watch the musical of Mean Girls, and this time around when I tried again to watch the musical, I was actually able to get through it. It was quite a good musical. I found a version of it where the audio was actually good and it was totally legal. And with having watched that recording, I now feel more confident in saying what I'm about to say, and that is I think I know why people didn't like the 2024 Mean Girls movie. Quick disclaimer, I think the movie is good. I think that if the movie had been released just on its own and Mean Girls 2004 and Mean Girls the musical both were not things that existed, it would have been a highly successful movie, maybe not as highly successful as many other movies that exist out there, but I think it would have been much more successful and much more liked than it ended up being. And I think the reason that it didn't turn out very well is because there was too much comparison happening, in the sense that it was a movie based off of a musical that was based off of a movie, but it was also based off of that movie. And you might say that sounds really weird and triangular, and I think that that's the problem. Mean Girls, the 2004 original movie, is very much different from Mean Girls the musical. And the reason of this is the fact that they change a couple things to make the script flow more, because there are things that work in a musical and things that work in a movie, and they aren't always exactly the same thing. In order for something to translate from a movie into a musical, well, first of all, you have to write songs, and you have to figure out how the songs will take away as well as add to the plot, because in songs you can give more characters signs of deeper emotions and intrigues and things like that. But because music takes up a lot of the time, it's a little bit difficult to have all those original details inside of the musical, because there's just only so much that can be fit in there, as well as the songs. Now, a couple musical adaptations do this a little bit differently. Like, I haven't read Les Mis, shout out Les Mis, but I've seen the musical and it is like entirely singing, and that's just simply how the story progresses. Singing isn't something where characters burst into song. They are pretty much always singing. So there's a couple of ways to do that, but obviously Mean Girls isn't like a musical that should be done like Les Mis, and if it was, I don't even know how I would feel about that. That's a different universe, and I have different opinions in that universe. Regardless, making a musical and making a movie is very different. Making a movie musical is a whole third thing. A lot of movie musicals, they gain their success by being so faithful to the musical, while of course having to cut things because somehow it just doesn't fit in right because of how different movies and musicals truly are. Some things that the Mean Girls musical changed are just things that didn't exist in the movie fully, like, for example, Erin not living in the school district, and Erin being genuinely, like, kind of a more interesting character. Or maybe that was just, like, the guy who was playing him, because I was like, whoa, you seem really cool, you know? I also think personality-wise, some characters were like changed or leaned on in different ways, and that's okay. That's what happens when you adapt and when you make different versions of the same story, because ultimately the same story is still there. Now, pulling that and putting it back into a movie is difficult because you have two options. You have option number one, where you just redo the movie, like fully. Mean Girls 2004, but like you're doing it a little bit different and maybe you add in some music. That seems a little bit weird and strange, right? And then there's the other version where you are significantly more faithful to the musical adaptation, and it's a movie for musical fans. The second version is significantly better, and there might be other options as well, but we're just going to look at these two options for the moment. Now, option number two, in my opinion, is significantly better, and that's the way that is, you know, the path of number one, least resistance, but also it makes it clear so that this is for the people who were into the musical. And if you want to watch something for the, if for people who are into the movie, you watch the original movie. By doing that, a lot of things that would have happened in the musical, things like, I don't know, all the jokes about like the mascot costume and a bunch of other just little niche musical things would have been a lot better. But they didn't do that. They didn't make a movie for the musical fans. What they did was they tried to combine the 2004 movie with the musical to create 2024 Mean Girls. By taking just bits and pieces of each of these, you do create a coherent movie, but you don't create something that people want. It was nice. It was fun callbacks and things like that with certain scenes that didn't exist in the musical and bringing them back for the 2024 movie. However, that's not what the people wanted. Like, that isn't the goal. And by mixing the two of them, you think, okay, well, we get a little bit of the best of both worlds, but instead you're doing an adaptation at the same time as you're doing a remake. And nobody really likes remakes. At least I don't like remakes. If they had adapted specifically from the musical and ignored the like original source, that would have probably ended up being a more successful movie, because then people can say, okay, this is a musical adaptation and it is just a slow progression. I really think that the main issue is that they decided to take a little bit of both, and therefore that pleased nobody. A lot of people complain about the casting, about the clothes that they were wearing, about like the music that they chose to include in the music they excluded. I think that they just shouldn't have been afraid to make a musical adaptation. They should have gone and just fully committed to the fact that they were adapting from a musical. While adapting from another movie and a musical is an interesting idea, and it can work, and it technically did work. It didn't make anybody happy, and I think that that's why people don't enjoy it. There's so many things that people complain about, but I do truly think that the heart of the issue is that it is a good movie. Mean Girls 2024 is a good movie. It's not great, but it's good. And the main issue is that it didn't make the people who were into the movie happy, and it didn't make people who were into the musical happy. The people that it made happy were a very niche group of people who could separate it into its own thing, except its own thing was a weird amalgamation of sorts. And I think that it's, once again, not bad, not a complete failure. But I think that it would have been more well received, and people would have enjoyed the idea of it more if it had been more faithful to the musical and it had excluded more things from the original movie that they decided to bring back. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you have a wonderful day. Bye for now.